Today my presentation will be over why cheerleading should be considered a sport. Cheerleading has many values and points that stand out on why it should be considered a sport. I will be talking about the ways cheerleading should be considered a sport. Just like when you look up what makes a sport, it says an athletic activity requiring skill. When you look up why cheerleading should be considered a sport, it says the definition of cheerleading is an activity involving physical exertion and often in a competitive nature. So when I made my last point about sports, it said activity requiring. I believe that cheerleading is very activity requiring, which cheerleading is an activity requiring and physical exertion, and cheerleading comes into play in stunting, tumbling, jumping, and dancing. Cheerleading has many injuries. So the injury rate compared to other sports, cheerleading is a leading cause of catastrophic injuries in female athletes at the high school and collegiate level. From Dr. Samantha Roseman, a Boston-era pediatrician. I really love this article because it shows the danger of the sport. We flip on the floor and throw other people over our heads while they are flipping and spinning on the way down. We are holding 100-pound girls over our heads for a long amount of time, which is very exhausting and can be tiring by the time you end your routine. Imagine having someone over your head and throwing them into the air and trusting another group to catch the girl on the way down. Men always talk about how cheerleading is so easy, so let's put this into a man's perspective. Imagine holding a girl or two with one arm above your head. So one girl on each arm, or just one with one arm. And holding her there for a long amount of time. And they're 100+ pounds. Just an average girl you're holding above your head. So studies from the National Center of Catastrophic Sports along the University of North Carolina and Emerson Hospital in Massachusetts says the percentage of injuries related to football are in the 90th percentile, while catastrophic injuries attributed to cheerleading are over 65%. This shows that cheerleading is and can be dangerous. Another recent study found that cheerleading is the most dangerous sport for females because of the high risk for concussion and catastrophic injuries, which are classified as injuries that result in a long-term medical condition or permanent disability or even a shorter lifespan. Everyone likes to say that cheerleading isn't a sport, but once you pull out the numbers of injury rates, people start to realize how dangerous this sport really is. And the sport is more dangerous than most people think, just because you don't realize all the head injuries that you can get. Most people just think ACL, MCL, meniscus, your ankle, wrist, arm, and that's it. Many people have broken ribs, concussions, multiple concussions in a year or in a cheer season. So once you pull all those numbers out, people do start to realize how and why it is so dangerous. In today's world, we have football players and wrestlers that can get scholarships in cheerleading, so they can't get a scholarship in football or wrestling, so they resort to cheerleading and stunting to get a scholarship. When you get into the collegiate level of cheerleading, you are lifting 100 to 130-pound girls over your head for a good amount of time when you are competing on a competition floor. Cheerleading teams, you can have senior level teams and high school senior lifting middle school girls into the air. You also see a lot nowadays of girls holding other girls above their head. So that's why when you show people that, men are like, oh, maybe that's like they kind of say, oh, it's easy. If a girl can lift a girl above their head, then I can do it. Which isn't true. They're very heavy, and not a lot of people can, or know anyone that can lift a girl above their head. So when we see these teams with these tiny little girls, and then one high school cheerleader that is anywhere from 70 to 130 pounds, that's where they get oh, cheerleading's so easy. But those 70-pound girls can be extremely heavy. So when you look back, about 40 years ago, cheerleaders were known for two things: sex appeal and dance moves, which is not competitive cheer at all. You see that a lot in the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, but not in today's cheerleaders. So this is an interesting quote because this is actually what people still think nowadays. The older generation still thinks this cheerleading is just about sex appeal and dance moves. So when grandparents hear that cheerleader, like their grandkids are going to be cheerleaders, they freak out because they think that their granddaughter is only doing it for sex appeal, which is not true at all. No one nowadays does it for sex appeal. There's no sex appeal in any cheerleading at all. So, but most people do think of sideline cheers, well, cheerleading as the sideline cheer, football and basketball, which is not a sport at all. I mean, you do stunt, well, you can't stunt. Most schools do not. You jump, tumble, and not a lot of schools dance anymore. So it is not competitive. You don't usually see the other team, like the other cheerleaders. So that's why they say that cheerleading, like the competitive cheerleading, is the one that is competitive, because you do compete for first place. I mean, you can go as far as worlds for teams. You travel all across the United States for this sport. So this is why I think that cheerleading should be considered a sport.